I really believe that when we invest in ourselves, it's a great investment, and we don't always earn the money back right away. And that is okay, because we still have us. We have the knowledge, we have the lessons that we learned, even when it was a quote unquote bad investment. That's often when we learn really transformative lessons, and that gets to stay with us. That carries forward. Those lessons aren't going anywhere. And that very lesson may end up making you 10x, 20x, 50x over time.
Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm super excited for today's episode. Before I dive in, I have to say I'm blown away that listeners like you have made this a top 25% global podcast. As a way to give back and provide insane value for free, I'd like to invite you to take my Money Wounds quiz. In just 6 questions, you'll get insights into your relationship with money that will feel so accurate. And then you get access to my free masterclass on how to heal your money wounds. Just go to moneywoundsquiz.com to start.
Hello, welcome back to the show. I hope you're doing well, and I'm excited for today's topic. I wanted to bring in a little riff. This is something that I see come up a lot in the coaching containers that I'm leading, and it's around ROI, return on investment. And how do we measure it? How do we decide good versus bad? What are we taking into account when we make that determination? And I really believe that there's so much happening here energetically. And so I first just want to give some examples, because specifically when the question came up in coaching containers, it was around ROI in a container, right? And this client was saying, I've joined some programs and seen some people celebrating right away and like taking off, like having the win. For example, like jumping into a money manifestation program, and there's 5 people on day 1 that are like, I've made back my entire investment, or I've tripled my investment, or I just found out I'm getting an inheritance, or this check came in the mail, etc. And the client who was sharing this was feeling like she's not had that experience, where it's maybe taken her like 6 months after the container was completed to make back the investment. And so the ROI did not feel as big or as potent or as present for her. And if you're listening and you've never been in these kinds of coaching containers, it might sound a little foreign, but the experience that she was describing is something that I've also experienced. I joined the Bro Mastermind that I talk about, which was initially I'm trying to think, how much did it cost? I think it was $24,000 for 6 months. And I saw some people seemingly taking off immediately and just skyrocketing to $100,000 months. And I made that mean that something was wrong with me, that I wasn't being as good of a student as I could be, or that something wasn't right with my business because I wasn't having those results. And it wasn't until later that I was able to look at it from a more objective lens and start to tell myself a different story. Okay. So whenever we see something happening for someone else, we're telling ourselves a story about that. And that story is making us either feel good, bad, or neutral. So if you see someone else making back their investment day 1, and the story you tell yourself is, if she can do it, I can do it. Wow, this is so great that I have evidence around me that this is possible. And I know that if I'm seeing lots of examples of something and I'm being surrounded by people being successful and getting great results, that means that it's on its way for me. And you genuinely feel excited. holy crap, oh my gosh, look who I'm surrounded with. This is amazing. If it actually feels like excitement and celebration in your body, that's amazing, right? That's where you've told yourself a story that has turned this into something super positive. Now, it's also possible to neutralize the story. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute because I think we often approach it in a very binary way. This is either good or it's bad. So the story you can tell yourself that makes you feel bad is it happens for other people, but not me. They're getting results and I'm not. I'm broken. I'm not worthy. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. My business isn't as good as theirs. Maybe it's never going to happen for me, etc. All of those things. I'm behind. Ooh, that used to be a big one for me. I'm not doing enough and I'm not doing it fast enough. That was what it always felt like. And so, of course, I would look for lots of evidence that made me feel that way. So other people getting the results faster or they're younger. So geez, they learned this when they were in their 20s and I'm 15 years older than them and I'm still figuring it out. Geez, I am so behind. So those are examples of where we've now taken a fact and we've added a story around it that makes us feel bad. So let's talk about the other alternative, which is neutral. If you normally tell yourself a disempowering story, then if you can just get to neutral, it makes a huge difference. So when I saw this group of 3 guys join the mastermind and right away go from making $5,000 a month to $70,000 a month to $100,000 a month, the first knee-jerk reaction is the disempowering one. The neutralizing is looking at the facts of their business, okay? So they had been doing a low ticket model and what they did, and when they plugged into this mastermind suggested that they switch to a high ticket, very warm audience, hot audience, people who had bought something from them in the past, they had an influx. It's not to take away from their success, but it's adding in more data points that helped me to understand why the success happened, right? It wasn't just this overnight thing where it's like, they're the chosen ones, they're more worthy, their business is better than mine. It's actually, they've putting in the work for years, building this audience, understanding the problem that they want to solve, building out curriculum and coaching skills in order to solve that problem. And then all they did was tweak their pricing and the way that they delivered it, and all of a sudden had this huge skyrocket. So that's a neutralization. We can always do that. And I see there's a coach that I know who talks about doing like $250,000 cash in her first year as a coach. And that could feel really disempowering to someone who is multiple years into coaching and hasn't come anywhere near that. But what I know about this person is that actually she had a blog for years prior, and she was on the local news every week doing a segment. So she already had a massive audience. She already had a lot of authority and reputation. And so when she switched from blog to coaching and put out an offer, it's actually not that surprising that she would have a $250,000 a year her first year, because she already had the know and trust factor with thousands of people and was just putting something else in front of them that was meeting a need for them, where now they were transacting with her and paying her thousands of dollars for this thing. Neutralizing. It doesn't make her worse for it, but it also doesn't make me feel bad because it's just different. And we're in different stages, or our businesses have different strengths, and that is okay, and that is fine.
We'll get back to the episode in just a second, but this is too good not to share. Did you know that when you leave a review for the podcast and then send it to hi@emilywilcox.com, you get a free month of Wealthy and Woo Club? This is my membership that takes you on a journey to building the bank account of your dreams. Doesn't matter your occupation or gender. If you're someone who wants more money in your personal bank account, Wealthy and Woo Club is where it's at. Just write a review for the show to get your first month free, or join directly via the link in the show notes for just $7 per month.
So I want to talk about that energetics first, because when we talk about ROI on an investment and whether or not it's good or bad, really what we're talking about is what's the story that we're telling ourselves. Now, I also want to zoom out beyond the coaching industry, okay? Because the client who brought this forward, who made back her investment within 6 months and was feeling like that was a bummer compared to others, is measuring in the vacuum of the coaching industry. Now, there are investments that Jeff and I do. There's one investment, now I'm like, of course, blanking on the name, but you put your money into this fund. This fund is backed by a whole real estate asset portfolio. And you have to leave your money in for 3 years. And after 3 years, you're guaranteed a 100% return on investment. So I can't remember what we put in. We might have put in 60 grand or something. So it's tied up for 3 years, can't do anything with it. But at the end of 3 years, it's now 120,000. Pretty great deal, right? We're super happy to do that. Completely passive income, backed by a lot of assets. So the chances of things going south or whatever is very minimized. But it takes 3 years to double the investment. And I think that's fantastic. But in the coaching industry, if you were to say you earn back your investment, but it took 6 months, or this and you'll double this investment, but it's going to take 3 years, we often interpret that as it takes a long time. That wasn't a good investment. And I really believe that when we invest in ourselves, it's a great investment. And we don't always earn the money back right away. And that is okay, because we still have us. We have the knowledge, we have the lessons that we learned, even when it was a quote unquote bad investment. That's often when we learn really transformative lessons, and that gets to stay with us. That carries forward. Those lessons aren't going anywhere. And that very lesson may end up making you 10x, 20x, 50x over time. But you've got to give it time. And it takes even longer when you're busy beating yourself up about the investment. So when we can zoom out beyond the coaching industry, compare to other traditional investments and what is the ROI, it helps us to right size things. And then understanding that when we invest in ourselves, there's such an exponential and component of it that's very difficult to quantify, because it's hard to put a dollar value on every single lesson that we learn and how it helped prepare us for this next business opportunity and what the true ROI was. But when we can trust it and believe it and know that it's there and see the effects of it, even if we can't attribute each business win back to this specific thing that we invested in, over time, we can just say, every time I've invested in myself, when I look at what my business has done in the 1 year, 2 year, 3 years following, I see that it's grown tremendously. Therefore, I know that investing in myself really does work out. It really is very beneficial. And I'm not like a day laborer. I'm not looking to do the work today and get paid today. I'm willing to do the work and get paid later. And that's okay. I have trust and I know that the investment is all working out. Now, the last piece that I want to talk about with this is also understanding that any investment can look good or bad based on the timing. So if you sold your house at the wrong time, you could be like, if we would have held on to it a year longer, we would have made so much more money. And it's okay. Yeah, in hindsight, you know that. But also, what if you had sold it and then right after that, the market had crashed? You would have been patting yourself on the back like, we're so genius. I'm so glad that we sold right now. So I really don't believe in trying to get it perfect because there really is no such thing. Even the people who held on to properties through the 2008 housing crash in the United States, their property values went way down for a couple of years. Like they were totally upside down on them. But now, if we fast forward into the year 2023, those properties are worth so much more, right? So was it a good investment for them to hold on to them, or was it a bad investment? It all depends. It all depends. Maybe they needed to sell at that point in time because otherwise they were going to be homeless and out on the streets and whatever, and they lost a job. And so it made sense to sell, even though, yeah, if they would have held on to the property 20 more years, it would be worth more. Or maybe it was a bad decision to hang on to it that whole time, because if they had sold it and put the money into something else, it would be an even bigger return now. So if there is no absolute right or wrong, and when we judge ourselves through one lens, we're not taking into account so many other perspectives and so many other factors that factor into the timing and the opportunity cost of that money being wrapped up in that investment. Now, I also focus a lot on money energetics and how we feel with it and being in relationship with it. And so it's like sometimes cashing in an investment and having that money sitting in your bank account because you're really desiring to feel safe with money right now and you want to be in closer relationship with it can be a really good and beautiful thing. And it doesn't have to make sense on paper because there's an energetic trade-off, everything, right? Here's an example, okay? Let's say that my husband had an opportunity to make killer money, awesome job opportunity, but he was going to have to move to a different state and live in that state for 6 months. If my husband takes that job, we gain the money, but we are depleted in terms of love and connectivity and the family dynamic at home, right? If he turns down the job, we're quote unquote losing on the money side of things, but what we've gained by saying no to that opportunity is we're saying yes to keeping the family unit together, all the love that we get to have, the connectedness, the memories that are going to be made during that time when he would have been away. It's a trade-off. And that is always true with investment. There's always a trade-off. Now, investors will talk about it as opportunity cost. When the money is over here, it could have been doing something else over here. But there's also energetics involved, and there are energetic trade-offs. And so if you invest every last dollar, and so in theory, your money is making you money over in their pot, but in the pot that you look at every day, which is your personal bank account, it looks and feels like you are broke because you moved all that money into that investment. And so every day you're feeling triggered in scarcity and lack. Is that a good investment? Is that a good trade-off? Even if that money makes money for you, how much money did you lose out on by being a vibratory match for lack and scarcity? So those are the things that we want to consider when we're thinking about ROI, when we're thinking about investments, and really making it okay to pay attention to the energetics and pay attention to how you feel. And anytime you're making a decision or you're telling yourself a story that makes you feel bad, stop. Don't do it. Don't make that investment. Don't take action from that place. Tell yourself a new story. Get to a place where it at least feels neutral, if not feels good, and then take action from that place instead. And this is an example of how we balance energetics and strategy. It's mostly energetics. But once the energetics are right, then there are strategies, then there are actions that we can take that will benefit us greatly. So I hope you enjoyed this riff and this conversation around ROI. I really hope that it served you in rewriting maybe some old stories that you have about investments you've made, and that it will help you be more tuned into how you feel with your money as you're in these situations in the future. As always, thank you so much for tuning into the show, and I will talk to you soon.
You are the best. Thank you so much for listening today. When you subscribe, review, and share this show, it's an important and free way to show your support. I'd also love to stay connected on Instagram. You can follow me at nmakesmoney. And if you're curious about working together, head to explore.emilywilcox.com to learn more. Until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes.